Alright, what is up you guys, and welcome back to the Progressive Skills in English Level 2 coursebook. In today's recording we're going to be going over reading a brief history of space travel. Okay, so let's hop right in. Here we have 2.5 vocabulary for reading the solar system. So we're going to be reviewing this vocab right here, and we're going to choose the correct word to complete each sentence. So we have the writer got on or in the motorbike. Okay, so the rider got on. You don't go inside the motorbike, you go on top of the motorbike, so on. Okay, so the rider got on the motorbike. 2. The age of flying began just over 100 years behind or ago, and we talked about this before. Behind, you never use behind here, so ago. Okay, the age of flying began just over 100 years ago. 3. The steam engine was a very important invention. Obviously invention, right? It's a very important invention. 4. The pilot/driver of the plane has a lot of experience of flying. Obviously, when you're talking about flying, it's a pilot, okay? It's not a driver. So the pilot of the plane has a lot of experience of flying. 5. There are many different methods of travel or transport. Okay, so it's actually transport, right? A way to get from a place to the other, okay? The head/captain ordered the men to start the ship's engines. And obviously, when we're talking about ships, who drives the, or not who drives the ships, who moves the ships, it's the captain, okay? So the captain ordered the men to start the ship's engines. All right? Now, let's move on. Quick vocab box here, you guys. Actually, we're going to use the vocab box, some of the words from the vocab box here in exercise B, which is understanding vocab in context. Let me actually open this and see if you guys can get a better view here. Okay, so we do have the vocab box, so we'll go over them quickly, and then we'll change some of the words and add them to this text right here. So we have astronomer, at all, exploration, the furthest, inhabit, land, launch, the moon, orbit, planet, satellite, solar system, star, universe. Okay? Now let's go to exercise B here. Let's start reading and adding. We're going to have to make some necessary changes, you guys, okay? Same word, but it may be in plural, different grammar. It depends, okay? So here we go. Hundreds of years ago, people in Europe believed that the Earth was the center of the... What do you guys think? The Earth was the center of the... That's correct. We'll say universe, okay? So was the center of the universe. They thought that the sun and all the dash went round the Earth. Okay, so went round the Earth, we'll probably say planets, right? Do we have planets? Yes, we do. We have one planet, so we'll add an S. Went round the Earth. Okay. However, at the start of the 16th century, a Dutchman called Copernicus said, the Earth and all the planets dash the sun. This one's pretty simple. Orbit the sun, okay? Orbit the sun, meaning moving around the sun, okay? We know now that the sun is a dash at the center of our solar system. If you guys didn't know, the sun is a star, okay? So we now know that the sun is a star at the center of our solar system. Some dash say that there are dash in our system. Okay, so we'll say astronomers. Who are astronomers, you ask? Astronomers are, it's basically the fancy word for basically space scientists, okay? So we'll say astronomers, okay? Astronomers say that there are 9 planets. Yep, planets, okay? We'll say planets again in our system. Others believe that there are only 8. Pluto, that's the name of the 9th planet if you consider it a planet, is usually the dash planet from the sun. This one's pretty simple. Do we have furthest? Yes, is usually the furthest planet from the sun, okay? But it is so small that some people say it is not a planet, we'll say at all, okay? So at all. But it is so small that some people say it is not a planet at all. The Earth is the third planet from the sun. It is the planet that we, what can we use? We can use inhabit, right? We inhabit and live on. So the Earth is the third planet from the sun. It is the planet that we inhabit, right? It has a natural dash which orbits the Earth. Okay, so what orbits the Earth, you guys? This one's pretty simple. That's correct. We'll say the moon. It has a natural, we'll say, satellite here, which orbits the Earth. It is called the moon. Okay? Our dash is in space. Okay, this one's pretty simple. Our solar system, you guys, solar system is in space. No human being went into space until the second half of the 20th century. In 1969, men dash on the moon and returned safely to Earth. This one's pretty simple. Men landed on the moon and returned safely to Earth. By the way, fun fact, Neil Armstrong was the first person to ever land on the moon. Okay? Now spacecraft dash almost every month. Okay, so we'll use the word launch, but we're gonna change it, so we'll say now spacecraft are launched almost every month. Many scientists think that the next object for space dash is the planet Mars. Okay, space, we'll say space exploration, right? What's the next idea about exploring space? So we'll say exploration. Okay? So yeah, many scientists think that the next object for space exploration is the planet Mars. Okay? So that was understanding vocab, you guys. Let's move on. So here we have an exercise just to develop some critical thinking. Excuse me. So at one time, people actually thought that the sun went round the Earth. Why do you think that happens? Like, why did people at one time believe that the sun went round the Earth? Well, this will depend on you as a student, but I'll say, because have you guys noticed that there's always day and night, right? On this planet Earth, have you ever seen anything else that's not day and night, right? The sun appears to rise and causes morning, right? And if you notice, the sun travels across the sky during the day, and it sets for it to be evening, right? So at an older time, people believed that that was the sun moving around the planet. But turns out we were the ones, as in Earth or planet Earth, we were the ones moving around the sun and not the opposite, right? Just people a long time ago didn't think that the Earth was turning, okay? Which we now know is false. Okay, so that was exercise C. Now let's move on. Alright, you guys, so now let's move on. Here we have 2.6 real-time reading, cannons and rockets. So here we have exercise A, activating ideas. What is the connection between fireworks and space travel? Now what I want you to do is write that question down, because you will know the answer to that question at the end of this lesson, okay? We'll go over it later. So now let's go to exercise B, predicting content. So look at the opposite page for 30 seconds. What is the text about? And then we're going to read the topic sentences on the left below, then read the statement beside each one. Is it true or false? And if it's false, then correct it. Okay, so we're going to have to read this first to answer the questions. So just looking at it, we know that this text is gonna be about space travel. It says here, A Brief History of Space Travel, Part 1, Gunpowder, Cannons, and Rockets, okay? So the text is about space travel. Now, let's read and answer the questions. A Brief History of Space Travel, Part 1, Gunpowder, Cannons, and Rockets. In about 800 BCE, a person in ancient China mixed sulfur, potassium nitrate, and carbon. He set fire to the mixture. It exploded. The mixture was gunpowder. The new invention of gunpowder was mainly used by the Chinese in fireworks. One of these fireworks was the rocket. Someone discovered that rockets could be very big. These big fireworks could be weapons. The Chinese sometimes fired rockets at their enemies. They didn't know it, but their invention led over 1,000 years later to space travel. Between the 10th and 13th centuries, Arab traders in China learned about gunpowder. They took it to Europe. People there also used it for fireworks. However, the Europeans mainly put gunpowder in new guns called cannons. Cannons were weapons for blowing holes in castle walls. There are reports that cannons were used at the Battle of Seville in 1248. Cannons could blow huge holes in castle walls. The arrival of gunpowder in Europe therefore led eventually to the end of castles because there was no safety inside a castle anymore. But what has all of this got to do with space travel? Wernher von Braun, a German scientist, studied the rockets of the ancient Chinese and the cannons of medieval Europe. In December 1934, von Braun invented a rocket which traveled a long way. The fuel of the rocket was not gunpowder, but liquid oxygen. Nazi Germany attacked London with the rocket at the end of the Second World War. But what about space travel? On 8th September 1944, the first rocket hit London. It killed 3 people and wounded 17. Before the end of the war, over 500 rockets were launched. They killed nearly 9,000 people and injured more than 25,000 people. 25,000. Von Braun once remarked to one of his colleagues, "The rocket worked perfectly, except for landing on the wrong planet." Alright, so that was an interesting text. Let's go back to exercise B here, predicting content, okay? So here we have, we're going to read the topic sentences and read each statement and check if it's true or false. If it's false, then we'll correct it, okay? So, the new invention of gunpowder was mainly used by the Chinese in fireworks. Okay, so paragraph 1 will probably be about Chinese fireworks. That is actually true, but it's mainly used for something else too. Remember, you guys? It's for space travel as well, okay? 2. Between the 10th and 13th centuries, Arab traders in China learned about gunpowder. Paragraph 2 will probably be about Arab traders. This one is true as well. 3. Cannons could blow huge holes in castle walls. Paragraph 3 will probably be about castles. This one is also true. Okay? Wernher von Braun, a German scientist, studied the rockets of the ancient Chinese and the cannons of medieval Europe. Paragraph 4 will probably be about cannons in medieval Europe. That's wrong. It'll be about von Braun. So, it'll be about von Braun. Okay? On 8th September 1944, the first rocket hit London. Paragraph 5 will probably be about the future. That's wrong. Paragraph 5 is not about the future. It'll be about rockets in London in the past, okay? So it will probably be about the rockets in London in the past, okay? So let's go back just for a second to exercise A. What is the connection between fireworks, you guys? So based on the text that we just read, we now know that with the invention of gunpowder and its use for fireworks later on, or 1,000 years later to be specific, people have been able to use rockets with something other than gunpowder for fuel, which can be used for space travel and basically weapons and etc. Okay? What else do we have? We have exercise C, understanding a text. Read the text opposite, deal with any new words, and match each question with an answer below. Okay, this one's pretty simple, again from the text. So, what happened around 800 BCE? And this one's pretty simple. Someone invented gunpowder, right? What is gunpowder exactly? What do you guys think? That's correct. It's a mixture of, what was the name of the chemicals in gunpowder? It was right here. Where is it? Where is it? Yes, right here we go. So it's sulfur, potassium nitrate, and carbon. Okay? Well, you guys have to get that. So mixture. Here we have it. So what happened around 800 BCE? Someone invented gunpowder, right? And what is gunpowder? It is a mixture. Okay, so what did the Chinese use gunpowder for? They used it for fireworks and rockets, right? So for fireworks and rockets. When did gunpowder arrive in Europe, you guys? It was sometime around the 13th century. Okay? What did Europeans use gunpowder for? I think they used it for they used it as a power source, right? Yeah, they used it as a power source for cannons. Yes, so they used it for fireworks and as a power source for cannons. Okay? Why did gunpowder lead to the end of castles? Well, this one's pretty simple. It's simply because cannons with gunpowder could blow holes in the castle walls, meaning, obviously, castles weren't safe anymore. What was the power source of Van Braun's rockets? This one's pretty simple again, liquid oxygen. What did Von Braun want to use his rockets for? He wanted to use it for space travel, but obviously he didn't. Okay, so that was exercise C. Let's go to exercise D here. So this is something called transferring information. So what you're going to basically do is make a timeline of the key information in the text. So what does that mean? It means you're going to make a small table, right? One section for dates of the text and for the different events that happen. So for example, for the date section, you'll probably say 800 BCE, right? And for the event, you'll say Chinese invented gunpowder, right? And you'll probably say between the 10th and 16th centuries for the what was it for the date? Yeah, you'll say for the event, you'll say Arab traders in China learned about gunpowder and took it to Europe. Okay, so this is how I want you to transfer the information into a timeline or a table to be more specific. Okay, let's go over this vocab box. We have arrival, castle, fire, fuel, gunpowder, huge, injure, kill, lead, lead, liquid, oxygen, remark, and weapon. Okay? So just to close this lesson out right here, I'm going to ask some questions, right, based on the text. So people, what is the word for people that you're fighting in a war? From the text, you guys. People that you are fighting in a war. What do you call them? That's correct. You call them enemies, right? Okay, what are periods of 100 years? That's correct. They're called centuries. What about 10 years? Periods of 10 years. That's correct. They're called decades, right? So 10 years, that's a decade. What's something that's very old? Not something, when I say very old and I'm talking about time, what do I mean? I usually mean the word ancient, okay? A-N-C-I-N-T. What about the Middle Ages, right? What do you call the Middle Ages? Something that's from the Middle Ages. Yeah, you'll say medieval, okay? And when I say fuel, what am I usually talking about? Well, you have two options here from the text. You're either talking about oil, petrol, okay, or gunpowder. All right, what's a gas that has the O symbol? This one's pretty simple. It's oxygen, right? A gas with the symbol O, excuse me, I'm messing up here. It's oxygen, okay? Well, if I say Earth, Mars, Venus, and other planets, what do I call this? I just gave it away. I said planets, okay? So these are called planets, okay? So that was just a fun way to close this lesson out. Now, let's move on, you guys. Alright, you guys, so now moving on, here we have learning new reading skills. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about finding information quickly, using numbers, predicting different content, and understanding complex subjects. Okay, so let's start with exercise A here. We have reviewing vocabulary. So what does the underlined word mean in each sentence from the text in lesson 2.6? Okay, so here we have some words that are going to be underlined, and we're going to try and find out what they mean in each sentence here. So, in about 800 BCE, a person in ancient China mixed sulfur, potassium nitrate, and carbon. He set fire to the mixture. What does the word mixture mean here, you guys? Well, a mixture here means a substance that's made by mixing other substances together. So in this case, it was sulfur, potassium nitrate, and carbon, okay? So again, a mixture is a substance made by mixing other substances together, okay? Now we have 2. The new invention of gunpowder was mainly used by the Chinese in fireworks. And mainly here is obviously an adverb. So what does mainly mean? Mainly usually means more than anything else, especially in this sentence right here. When I say the new invention of gunpowder was mainly, meaning more than anything else, used by the Chinese in fireworks. Okay? Then we have 3. The Chinese sometimes fired rockets at their enemies. This one's pretty simple. Enemies here means people who hate somebody, or people who act or speak against somebody. Okay? 4. Between the 10th and 13th centuries, Arab traders in China learned about gunpowder. Traders here means people who buy and sell things as a job, right? That's the meaning of a trader. People who buy and sell things as a job. 5. There are reports that cannons were used at the Battle for Seville in 1248. Okay, this one's pretty simple. A battle, obviously a battle is a fight between armies, ships, or planes, especially during a war. Okay? Then we have 6. The arrival of gunpowder in Europe therefore led eventually to the end of castles. What does eventually mean here, you guys? Well, it means that at the end of a period of time or a series of events. So in this case, it was the end of castles. Okay? Then we have 7. The fuel of the rocket was not gunpowder, but liquid oxygen. Okay. What is fuel? What do you call fuel? Well, fuel is basically any material, so not just oil or petrol. It's basically any material that produces heat or power. And it's usually when it is burnt, but that's not always the case. Okay? Then we have 8. Nazi Germany attacked London with the rocket. Okay, this one's pretty simple. Attacked. What does attack mean? It means attack mean an act of using violence to try to hurt or kill somebody. Okay? What else? We have 9. It killed 3 people and wounded 17. Here, wounded is pretty simple. Being wounded means being injured by a weapon. Okay? And finally, 10, we have von Braun once remarked to one of his colleagues, the rocket worked perfectly except for landing on the wrong planet. Okay. So remark here is actually interesting. It means that something that you say or write which expresses your opinion or a thought and some other things that are related to you, right? So either about someone specifically or about something. So in this case, it was obviously about the rocket. Okay? Now let's go to skills check 1 here. Here we have finding information quickly using numbers. So you got to know that when reading a text, numbers can come in different forms. So either normal numbers or in terms of words, or for example, words like centuries and 1, 2, again in spelling form, okay? And other words such as centuries, decades, etc. Okay? So again, we have normal numbers, words, spelling, right? And centuries, decades, words that often mean a specific time period. Okay? Now, always look for numbers in a text because they often give you the answer to research questions. Okay? So, if you're doing any research about a certain text, make sure that you take a look at the numbers because they can help you tremendously when doing research. Okay? And this one's a no-brainer. It's pretty simple. That you always got to make a timeline of events so you don't get lost, especially in a longer text. Right? Because if you don't make a timeline in the correct order, then you will get lost eventually. Okay? Now let's go to exercise B here, where we have read skills check 1. What numbers are often written as words? Well, based on the skills check, we know that numbers 1 to 10 are usually written as words, and the word centuries. I'd also like to add decades. Okay? These are all words or numbers that are written as words. Okay? Now, what I want you guys to do is, well, I mean, you should have already started doing that, but the first text right here, I want you guys to remember when I told you to make a timeline. Do that if you haven't done it already, and keep it with you because we will use it in the next lesson. Okay? So, just a quick way to make a timeline. We'll probably say, again, 800 BCE, right? The invention of gunpowder. Again, keep adding dates and write the events next to it. Okay? So now let's move on. Here we have this vocab box right here. We have attack, battle, enemy, eventually, mainly, mixture, traitor, wound. Okay? Now let's go to exercise C here. We have identifying a key skill, skills check 2. So predicting content using the adverb mainly. Okay, so we're going to talk about how you can predict content using the adverb mainly. So you got to know that adverbs often help you to predict information in the text, okay? So adverbs in general help you to predict the information in the text. Like, the new invention of gunpowder was mainly used in fireworks, right? So based on the word mainly here, I can predict 2 things. That either the text or the author will probably give another use for gunpowder because he said that mainly used in fireworks. That probably means that there's other uses for gunpowder, or that these big fireworks could be in fact weapons. Okay, so that's how you can predict content using the adverb mainly. So now let's open exercise C here. We have read skills check 2. what part of speech is mainly? Obviously, we just said it. It's an adverb. Okay. What do you expect to read after each of these sentences? Okay, so here we have some sentences, and then we have other sentences, and based on us personally, we could say what we expect to read after each of these sentences. So we'll say, A, the people of the area mainly lived in villages. Well, what do we have? He was interested. Nope. It's about some people used. We'll say some people lived in towns and cities, right? So the people of the area mainly lived in villages. Some people lived in towns and cities. B, early cars mainly used petrol as a power source. We'll say some cars, yeah, we'll use this one. So some cars used other power sources, for example, steam, right? C, Von Braun was mainly interested in space travel. Well, I mean, he was interested in other things as well, so this one's pretty simple. Okay, so he was interested in other things as well. D, liquid oxygen is mainly used to power space rockets. We'll say, well, it's used for other things as well, okay? Then we have E. This article is mainly about the ancient Chinese. Well, we'll probably say it's about other people as well. And finally, we have F. The festival of Eid al-Fitr is mainly for Muslims. Other religions can also take part. Okay, so let's go over them one more time before we move on. So, the people of the area mainly lived in villages. Some people lived in towns and cities. Early cars mainly used petrol as a power source. Some cars used other sources, for example, steam. Von Braun was mainly interested in space travel. He was interested in other things as well. Liquid oxygen was mainly used in power space rockets. It's used for other things as well. This article is mainly about the ancient Chinese. It's about other people as well. And finally, the festival of Eid al-Fitr is mainly for Muslims. Other religions can also take part. Okay? So that was exercise C, you guys. Now let's move on. Here we have exercise D, finding the subject and the verb. Okay. Let me open this. So in this exercise, we're gonna try and find all the subjects of our sentences and the verbs as well. Okay, so we'll circle the verb and underline the subject. Okay, so for number 1, the earliest picture of a parachute was drawn in around 1485 CE. So we'll say the earliest picture, that this is obviously subject, of a parachute was drawn in around, okay, so was drawn is the verb, okay? B, an inventor in Italy made the drawing. So we'll say an inventor is the subject and made is the verb, okay? C, the drawing by an Italian, Leonardo da Vinci, shows a man hanging from 4 ropes. So we'll say the drawing, in this case this is the subject, by an Italian, Leonardo da Vinci, all of this is extra information, shows is the verb, okay? D, the 4 ropes of the parachute are attached to a frame. So we'll say the 4 ropes, this is the subject, of the parachute, are attached to a frame. So are attached is the verb, okay? The sides of the frame are just over 7 meters. Okay, the sides, this one's pretty simple. The sides is the subject, are is the verb, okay? What else do we have? We have F. The frame of the device is the base of a pyramid. So again, the frame is the subject of the device is, so is the verb. The pyramid on top of the frame has been the same height as the base. So the pyramid, again, that's the subject. has. So has will be the verb. According to Da Vinci, the size and the shape of the device are extremely important. So H, we'll say the size and the shape, right? So here actually, I think it's the size and the shape, yeah, because this one starts with basically it starts with an adverb, right? It begins with an adverbial phrase, okay? So in this case, the size and the shape is the subject, and obviously of the device R is the verb. All right. So according to Da Vinci, the size and the shape of the device are extremely important. So again, the earliest picture, subject was drawn, an inventor made. The drawing shows the 4 ropes are attached, the sides are, the frame is, the pyramid has, the size and the shape are. Okay? So that was exercise D. Now let's move on. Okay, so here we have something called complex subjects. So sometimes the subject of a sentence can be a complete sentence itself, right? So these complex subjects always begin with the and of. So for example, the arrival of gunpowder in Europe, right, led to the end of castles. So the subject in this sentence is obviously gunpowder arrived in Europe, but there is no gunpowder arrived in Europe in the sentence. It was the arrival of gunpowder in Europe, hence why it's called a complex subject. You're going to have to basically get used to it, right? So when you read complex subjects, make the complete sentences in your head to help you understand, because without making the complete sentences, you might, if you're not used to it, it could trick you a little bit, okay? So always make sure to even write it down if you have to. Just write the complete sentence and try and find the correct subject, okay? So let's go to exercise E here, finding the original sentences. Okay, so here he wants us to rewrite the sentences with the noun in red as a verb. So here we have invention, flight, design, etc. So, the invention of the steam engine by James Watt led to faster travel on land and at sea. If I wanted to change invention into a verb, I'll probably say James Watt invented, see how I changed it? Changed the steam engine, right? Full stop, and I'll say it led. I'll just write it down. Led to faster travel on land and at sea. Oh, I gotta fix this. Travel on land and at sea. Okay? The flight of Orville Wright in the Flyer in 1903 was the start of the air age. Okay, so I want to change flight to a verb, so I'll say, okay, I'll say Orville Wright flew, right? See how I changed that? The Flyer, okay, wow, flew the okay, I need to write that in capital. Flyer in 1903. And full stop, I'll say it was the start of the air age. Okay? Then we have 3. The design of a helicopter by Sikorsky in 1910 did not result in the production of working machines. Or Sikorsky, basically. I read that wrong, my bad. So if I want to change design into a verb, I'll say Sikorsky, right? I'll say designed. What do you guys think? Designed, right? A helicopter in 1910, right? and then I'll just keep going. I'll say it did not result. It did not result in the production of working machines. Okay? Then we have 4. The launch of von Braun's rockets during the Second World War was the start of the space age. I want to change launched to a verb. I'll just say launched. So I'll say von Braun, right? Launched, right? Rockets during the Second World War. And I'll just end it here, and I'll say this was the start of the space age, right? Okay. The death of Hitler in 1945 marked the end of the Second World War in Europe. I'm going to change death to a verb. I'll say died, right? So I'll say Hitler died in 1945. This marked the end of the Second World War in Europe, right? And I'll write World War in capital. Boom. Okay? World War in Europe. And finally, we have 6. The failure of Guy Fawkes to blow up Parliament in 1605 is celebrated every year in Britain. The failure, so I'll change failure into a verb by adding ed. So I'll just say Guy Fawkes failed to blow up Parliament, right? Oh, let me add an A here. Parliament. To blow up Parliament in 1605. 1605. It is celebrated. Oops, let me add an A here. It is celebrated. Well, I wrote that wrong. It is celebrated every year in Britain. Okay? So that's, let me write that in capital. Britain. Okay? So finding the original sentences, now that we wrote these nouns as verbs, here we have James Watt invented the steam engine. It led to faster travel on land and at sea. Orville Wright flew the Flyer in 1903. It was the start of the air age. Sikorsky designed a helicopter in 1910. It did not result in the production of working machines. Von Braun launched rockets during the Second World War. This was the start of the space age. Hitler died in 1945. This marked the end of the Second World War in Europe. Guy Fawkes failed to blow up Parliament in 1605. It is celebrated every year in Britain. Okay, you guys? So that was exercise E. That's about it. So yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Alright, you guys, so now moving on, here we have 2.8, applying new reading skills, dogs, men and women, and shuttles. Okay, so A, reviewing vocab, find connections between these words. Okay, so this will be up to you now. I usually always say the connections, but I want you guys to dive a little deeper and find some of these connections on your own. So we have firework, rocket, weapon, launch, kill, wound, gunpowder, castle, and cannon, right? Find some connections in terms of meaning and also in terms of grammar. So where are or which of these words are verbs? Which of these are nouns? Are some words here, are there any words here that can be used as both verbs and nouns? find and let me know, okay? Here we have B, activating ideas. So study the heading and subheading of the text on the opposite page. What will the article be about? Okay, so here we have a brief history of space travel, part 2, dogs, men, women, and shuttles. Okay, so based on the article, it's going to talk about dogs, men, and women going into space. Okay? Now, moving on to exercise C, understanding a text. Okay, so we're going to have to read the text and then go back. So here we go. A brief history of space travel. Part 2, dogs, men, women, and shuttles. At the end of the war in 1945, Wernher von Braun went to the United States. He became director of the U.S. missile program. Missiles at that time were just very big rockets. However, von Braun's work on missiles did not directly produce the first space rocket. The study of von Braun's work by a Russian, Sergei Korolev, led to the launch of the first space rocket in October 1957. It put the first artificial satellite, Sputnik 1, into orbit around the Earth. In the same year, Russian scientists launched Sputnik 2 with a dog on board. It took 4 years for the Russians to send a man into space. Yuri Gagarin orbited the Earth once in 1961. 2 years after that, Valentina Tereshkova became the first woman to go into space. She was also Russian. The first American in space was Alan Shepard in 1961. However, most people remember the name of John Glenn instead, because he actually orbited the Earth 1 year later. All of these space journeys, and many more in the first 20 years of space travel, had one thing in common. The astronauts went up in a rocket and came back to Earth in a small capsule. The rocket itself did not return to Earth. It was expensive for the Americans to lose the rocket each time. There was a much cheaper way. It was called the Space Shuttle. On April 12, 1981, American scientists at Cape Canaveral in Florida launched the first space shuttle. It went up on a rocket but came back like a normal airplane. In total, there were more than 130 flights at first. There were more than 130 flights. At first, the shuttle was mainly used to put artificial satellites into orbit. Then it was used to take astronauts and equipment to the International Space Station. The use of the shuttle reduced the cost of space exploration considerably. However, there were also terrible accidents. For example, the explosion of Challenger on 28 January 1986 led to the suspension of the shuttle program for 3 years. Damage to the heat shield on Columbia also resulted in the loss of the shuttle on February 1, 2003. Okay? So that was the text, you guys. Now let's go back to exercise C. So here we have some sentences, and again, we're going to check if they're true or false, and we're going to match the correct explanation in each case. Okay? Whether it's true or false, we're going to match it with the correct explanation. So 1, missiles are not just very big rockets now. Okay, so this is true, right? It says at that time, so things have changed since that time, right? So true, it says at that time, so things have changed since that time. Von Braun's work did not contribute to the production of the first space rocket. Well, this is false. It did not directly produce it, but it did indirectly. So this one right here. Okay? 3. Korolev knew about von Braun's work. Well, this one's true. I mean, it says, what do we have here? I mean, it says the study of, he studied, so this one's true. So Korolev knew about von Braun's work. Sputnik 1 did not carry a person. Okay, so this is also true because it says that Gagarin was the first man in space, and that was 4 years later. Okay? Excuse me. 5. John Shepard orbited the Earth in 1961. That's false. It was, I think, John Glenn that did that. Yeah, was the first American to do that. So we'll go here. Okay? Was the first American to do that. For the first 20 years, astronauts came back to Earth in their rockets. This one's wrong as well. They came back in a small capsule. Yep, so here we go. They came back in a small capsule. Okay? The rocket was recovered after each flight. Again, false, because the rocket did not return to Earth. The rocket was simply lost in space. Where is it? It was suspended. Nope. What else do we have? The rocket did not return to Earth. The rocket was lost. Yep. The space shuttle was used for a number of purposes. Well, true, because it says it was mainly used to take astronauts, etc. So, yes, number of purposes. 9. The space shuttle program was suspended for 3 years after the second accident. That's wrong, it was suspended after the first one. And 10. Columbia crashed because the heat shield was damaged. Yes, it says damage to the heat shield. Well, that's because the heat shield was damaged. Okay? Now, let's move on. Here we have the vocab box. We have artificial, capsule, considerably, explosion, in common, missile, orbit, program, reduce, shuttle, suspension, terrible. Okay? Now let's go to exercise D using a key skill. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to find and underline all the numbers in the text below. Okay? So here we go. I'm not going to read it again, so I want you guys to pause the video, try and do it, and then check your answers here. So 1945. What else do we have? We have 1957 here. We also have 1. We have 2 as well. 4. 1961. 2. 1961 again. 1. 20. April 12, 1981 again. 130 flights. Anything else? 28th January 1986. February 1, 2003. Okay, so how many do we have? It was around, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So 17 numbers. Okay? So if you got 17 numbers, good job. If not, then that's fine. Okay? So what does each number represent? I'm not going to go over each number. It's simple. These are all basically a mix between names, dates, and what else? Names, dates, and basically the numbers of years, right? So different years. So 20 years, 1 year later, etc. And numbers of flights. Okay? So, and what else do we have? I think that's about it. Okay, yeah. One more thing, just before we leave. Exercise. You guys remember that table that I told you to go over? Remember that timeline or table that we said we were gonna do about the whole date and then section thing? Let me actually go back here. Yes, so the date and event. Remember when I told you to write the date and the events correlating to that date? Well, I want you to continue the timeline that you started with the text here. Okay, so again, a continuation, and just keep going until you get as much information as you can. Okay, so that was this lesson, you guys. Now let's move on. Alright, you guys, so now moving on to the final page of this reading section here, we have knowledge quiz. And this is just basically a quiz about theme 2 so far in terms of listening, speaking, and of course reading. Okay, so let's hop right in. We have exercise 1, match the questions and answers. Again, all of these are information from theme 2. So here we have a question: what can you race? So what can we race, you guys? Can we race gods or a god? Because of climate? No. Horses, cars, and other people. That makes sense. So we can race horses, cars, and other people. What can you inhabit, right? Where is a place, or what is a place that you can inhabit as a human being and live in? What do you say? We'll probably say a house, a town, an area, a country, a planet. All of these are places that you can inhabit. This one's pretty simple. What orbits the Earth? This one's pretty simple. The moon orbits the Earth. Okay? When do you need a parachute? We'll say to escape from a damaged plane. Who can you pray to? We'll say, this one's pretty simple, a god or the gods. Okay? What does a primitive society not have? We'll say that a primitive society actually does not have a lot of technology. So this one's correct. So a primitive society does not have a lot of technology. 7. What does an astronomer study? An astronomer studies space, right? Astronomy is the science of space, by the way. Okay? 8. Where are the tropics? We'll say that I think the tropics are in the north and south of the equator line. Yeah, so we'll say that north and south of the equator line. Okay? 9. What do scientists do with a hypothesis? We'll probably say that, they try to prove it, right? So they get it and then they try to prove it. Okay? What do you do with a firework? This one's pretty simple. You set light to it, right? This one's pretty simple. Why are some animals becoming extinct? Well, that's either because of climate or human activity. So because of climate or human activity. And 12, what can you use a rocket for? And this one's pretty simple. You can probably use a rocket as a weapon or to get into space. Okay? So what can you race? Horses, cars, other people. What can you inhabit? A house, a town, an area, a country, a planet, etc. What orbits the Earth? The moon. Pretty simple. When do you need a parachute? To escape from a damaged plane or if you're free falling. 5. Who can you pray to? God or the gods. What does a primitive society not have? A lot of technology. What does an astronomer study? Space. Where are the tropics? North and south of the equator line. What do scientists do with the hypothesis? They try to prove it. What do you do with a firework? Set light to it. Why are some animals becoming extinct? Because of climate or human activity. What can you use a rocket for? As a weapon or to get into space. Okay? So that was exercise A. Now let's move on to match the opposites here. So I'm pretty sure you guys know the opposites, right? A word and the opposite of that word. Okay? So here we have 1, friend. So it's pretty simple. Enemy is the opposite of friend. Then we have 2, be born. Opposite is die. 3, inland will be on the coast, right? You either live inland or on the coast, okay? 4, insert or remove, right? So you insert or remove. 5, horizontal, well, vertical, okay? positive, negative, okay? 7, take off, again, land, okay? 8, put will be take, okay? So you either put something or you take something, okay? 9, agriculture or industrial. And finally, 10, accept and reject, okay? So these are the opposites, you guys. Now let's move on. Here we have match the words with similar meanings. Okay, so here we have some words. Okay, so different words with very similar meanings. So we have almost. What's one word here, you guys, that has a similar meaning to almost? Can you guys let me know? Yes, we'll say, where do we have it? I think it's somewhere around, yep, there we go. So nearly, almost, nearly, okay? 2, attend. Attend basically means go to. So go to a place. Yep, there we go. So go to. Okay, attend, go to. 3, around. So around will be about. Do we have about? Ah, yeah, we do. Okay, so nice. Around will be about. 4, conclude. A similar word to conclude, end, right? Do we have end? Yep, we do. Okay, so conclude, end. 5, everyone. We'll say everyone as in, what do we have? Yep, we can say all the people. So everyone, all the people. 6, field. Okay, so field, we'll probably say area, right? Area has a very similar meaning to field. Then we have 7, bay. We'll say harbor. Harbor has a similar meaning to bay. And then 8, hobby. For hobby, we'll say interest, right? Something that's interesting to you. So hobby, interest. 9, maybe. Maybe we can also say perhaps, right? Maybe, perhaps. 10, rude. Rude, impolite, right? Opposite of polite is impolite or rude, okay? 11, reach. Reach, we'll say get to, right? Reach, get to. 12, participate. Participate means take part, okay? 13, continue. So we'll say continue means go on or has a similar meaning to go on. 14, happen. We'll say take place, right? When I say it took place, I'm saying that it happened, and I'll keep going with the information. And this one's pretty simple, power, energy, okay? So again, almost, nearly, attend, go to, around, about, conclude, end, everyone, all the people, field, area, bay, harbor, hobby, interest, maybe, perhaps, rude, impolite, reach, get to, participate, take part, continue, go on, happen, take place, and power, energy. Okay? So I think that was the reading section, you guys. Okay, so reading section, theme 2, done. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.